I said in my earlier video, um, when I said it on August 29th in a press release, uh, U.S. Admiral William Fallon, who was called, quote, the sole bulwark against an American attack on Iran, unquote, when commander of the U.S. Central Command and asked about war with Iran in an interview to Esquire magazine, which appeared in the April 2008 issue, said, quote, get serious. These guys are ants. When the time comes, you crush them, unquote. This is how the United States views India and Pakistan also. So this is what I said on August 29th in a press release. The next day, on August 30th, 2012, Indian time, and also the press release was on August 29, 2012, Indian time. So the next day, the August 30th, 2012 crash of two Indian military helicopters, Mi-17s, was carried out in response to what I said in the press release to illustrate this point. Get serious. These guys are ants. When the time comes, you crush them. Now I'll read some material about this ability of the United States from my blog, Indian Air Force Pilot's Murder. On November 18, 2011, I wrote, I said this in a press release, and that was included in this blog. When I say the new Chief of Air Staff, N.A.K. Brown, is a CIA raw man, I mean he literally sits at CIA supply terminals to participate in crimes against India. More than 1,000 Indian Air Force aircraft have crashed since 1970. The vast majority of the crashes caused by microwave signals from US satellites. In his first week in office as Chief of Air Staff, Brown caused two Indian Air Force fighter planes to crash with microwave signals from US satellites to give a boost to his bid to buy worse than worthless foreign aircraft for several tens of billions of dollars, of which he'll get a hefty cut along with the defense minister and the Italian woman who gets the largest cut. I said on October 11, 2011, that the, quote, suicide, unquote, of the chief test pilot Baldev Singh was murder to facilitate the claim of the fraudulent, quote, delay, unquote, in inducting the indigenous light combat aircraft, which is being used to justify, this delay is being used to justify the worse than worthless purchase abroad of foreign aircraft. India builds Sukhoi 30 MKI aircraft from raw materials. Why do you need to buy fighter aircraft from abroad? At this, A.K. Antony said on November 23, 2011, that the Sukhoi 30 MKI assembly line can only make 16 aircraft per year. Why couldn't you set up another assembly line? As soon as I asked this question, the report in Deccan Herald was changed by RAW to eliminate the reference to assembly line limitation and a reference to a Sukhoi 30 MKI crash of April 2011, which was its first ever, was inserted instead. Having Antony say that the Indian Air Force will continue to use the Sukhoi 30 MKI despite the crash, along with the new aircraft to be bought from abroad and the light combat aircraft. So the excuse for spending tens of billions of dollars on these foreign aircraft was changed from the limitation of the assembly line to the Sukhoi crash, and of course the LCA delay. The Sukhoi crash of December 13, 2011 has been caused 2 days ahead of the purchase decision, as the purchase was made impossible by my opposition to it. N.A.K. Brown, A.K. Antony, and the Italian woman should be booked for the murder of Baldev Singh, along with the head of RAW. All former heads of RAW should be booked for the murders of hundreds of Indian Air Force pilots. When Atal Bihari Vajpayee was Prime Minister, he had once gone to Bombay and spoken to the stock exchange about applying my proposal about money to India's economy, which, as I've said in the blog, how India's economy can grow 30% per year or more, can make India's per capita income surpass the United States in 10 years. So after Vajpayee spoke to the stock exchange about applying my proposal about money to India's economy, he had to abort his flight back to Delhi for fear his plane will crash. Of course, the CIRO has the ability to make his plane crash or any plane crash. The murders of several politicians by air crash have been accomplished by microwaves from satellites. A recent example was the murder of the Andhra Pradesh chief minister by air crash. In my blog, I have described how Indira Gandhi, when Prime Minister in 1980, went to her kitchen with the then US Vice President and former CIA Director George Herbert Walker Bush to arrange for the murder by air crash of her son Sanjay Gandhi, who had taken to slapping her in the presence of others under my influence. And the then CIA Director Frank Carducci publicly claimed credit for that air crash via a letter that appeared in the National Review magazine of the United States. On November 19, 2011, I said, integrated circuit chips made in the United States are required to provide for access to the United States National Security Agency so it can monitor and take control of their operations at will. Components and electronic equipment from the United States should be absolutely haram, absolutely taboo. Far from lamenting technology denial, equipment from the United States should be rejected even if it is offered on a platter and free of charge, as I have said. India's bought-up defense atomic energy, space, and other officials deliberately close their eyes to this threat. This also applies to US-made civilian aircraft, for example. There are 200,000 Indian engineers and scientists working in research and development for foreign companies in India. But instead of putting its money in research and development, in a letter dated January 5, 2004, to the press, which is included in my main blog, Nuclear Supremacy for India over US, I had suggested 1 million research and development workers in India in government-sponsored projects. Instead of putting its money in research and development, India's CIO government buys foreign equipment in all fields to keep India poor, weak, and enslaved. India's government lends hundreds of billions of dollars to the United States government in exchange for worthless US paper, but seeks foreign investment and World Bank loans for projects in India, giving ownership and control of India to India's enemies, despite the unlimited capital available to India by simply printing the money. I could say a lot more about how the US dollars that India gets by exporting software, uh, various other things, is worthless. Uh, but I'll go into that at some other time. One example I can give, a small example, it's not the biggest example, is it can't use those dollars to buy Iranian oil if it wants to. But actually, it's a lot more worthless than that. But I'll deal with that some other time. So, despite the unlimited amount of capital available to India by simply printing the money, see my blog, How India's Economy Can Grow 30% per year or more. As I've described there, the United States has been applying my proposal about money by stealth, and I've also openly, though it doesn't give me credit. But Manmohan Singh refuses to do so because this bugger, a CIA appointee, does what serves the United States, not India's interests. I had asked the Indian Army to arrest the top 1,000 or so officers of RAW. It has not done so. But, as I have said, India's nuclear forces obey Satish Chandra. He does not need India's conventional forces or the rest of the government and citizenry to defend India, which requires the destruction of RAW, which will be done by nuclear means. That is, the simultaneous nuclear destruction of New Delhi, Washington, and New York, with a warning that additional US cities will be destroyed with nuclear warheads already emplaced in them by special forces, if there is any retaliation. In a press release dated February 3rd, 2012, titled, Why Were Iraq's Aircraft and Tanks Behaving Erratically During the Gulf Wars? I said. I quoted from an earlier press release dated July 11, 2012, in which I said, why were Iraq's aircraft and tanks behaving erratically during the Gulf Wars? During the first Gulf War, it was reported that Iraq's fighter planes that rose to meet the American attackers were just flying randomly instead of attacking the attackers. In the Second Gulf War, therefore, Iraq simply buried its fighter planes in the sand or sent them to shelter in Iran, with which it has just fought a war. It was so desperate. So those planes were no good, you see, and they were quite comparable technologically to what India has. India's planes are also no good, you see. During the Second Gulf War, it was reported that Iraqi tanks defending Baghdad were firing randomly instead of hitting the advancing American tanks. Both these phenomena were due to the fact that microwave signals from US satellites can hack into and operate any digital circuitry. And the Iraqi inability to control its aircraft and tanks was due to such hacking. When an Indian Sukhoi 30 MKI crashed on December 13, 2011, the pilots who ejected safely reported that they were having difficulty controlling the plane and struggled to control it for 20 minutes before ejecting. This is what I have written about that. When I say I'm quoting from the paragraph I read earlier, when I say the new chief of air staff, N.A.K. Brown, is a CIA raw man, I mean he literally sits at CIA supplied terminals to participate in crimes against India. More than 1,000 Indian Air Force aircraft have crashed since 1970, the vast majority of the crashes caused by microwave signals from US satellites, which can hack into and operate any digital equipment. In his first week in office as Chief of Air Staff, Brown caused 2 Indian Air Force fighter planes to crash with microwave signals from satellites to give a boost to his bid to buy worse than worthless foreign aircraft of billions of dollars, of which he will get a hefty cut, along with the defense minister and the Italian war.
Who gets the largest cut? The Sukhoi crash on December 13, 2011, and the grounding of the Sukhoi fleet has been caused 2 days ahead of the purchase decision, as the purchase was made impossible by my opposition to it. The United States can similarly disable air defense missiles and has repeatedly disabled Pakistan's air defenses. It even disabled Pakistan's nuclear warheads during the Kargil conflict, as General Musharraf has admitted. I have repeatedly pointed to this parallel from microwave signals from US satellites, as in my addendum dated February 26, 2006, titled National Security Crisis Due to Microwaves from Satellites, in my main blog, which is titled Nuclear Supremacy for India over US. And this blog can be found by a Yahoo or Google search with the title. And I have provided solutions to this problem of microwave signals from US satellites. Despite all this, the criminals of the Indian government, the Cabinet Committee on Security, on January 5th, 2012, approved the purchase of $1.5 billion worth of worse than worthless French air-to-air missiles for the worse than worthless Mirage 2000 fighters. And since then, it has approved a lot more, including fighter aircraft from France for tens of billions and a lot more. What I've said uh, above about the peril from microwave signals from US satellites to the electronics of aircraft and tanks also applies to the electronic fuses for artillery shells, which the Indian government is reportedly purchasing from Israel. The same day, January 31st, 2012, that the decision in favor of the French fighter aircraft was announced, the crash of a Kiran trainer aircraft was caused by microwave signals from satellites to give a boost to the bid to buy the trainer pilotless trainer aircraft from abroad, which was pending then. Following my recent warnings about the US ability to hack the electronics of aircraft, tanks, missiles, nuclear warhead triggers, uh, etc., the following article, dated January 30th, 2012, titled Hacking Seen as Rising Risk with Car Electronics, has appeared on money.msn.com. That's http://auto-insurance/news.aspx feed Bloom, that's BLOOM, ampersand, date =2012013, ampersand, ID =147371112. It says, in part, there clearly is a vulnerability, said Adrian Lund, president of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, based in Arlington, Virginia. Quote, all these electronics we are bringing into cars seem to exacerbate that, unquote. A National Academy of Sciences panel, including Lund, elevated the concerns in a report January 18th, reviewing US regulators' work in finding the cause of unintended acceleration in Toyota vehicles. Savage and co-author Tadayoshi Kohuno from the University of Washington found vulnerabilities in telematics systems, which make the connections between cars and mobile communications. End quote. And then I said, mobile communications means microwaves. And it is microwave signals from satellites that the United States uses to make India's aircraft crash, for example.